Alright, hello everybody, I'm Nicholas Rinderle, and I'm discussing why history matters to us. Most of you probably think that history is one of the least relevant core subjects. After all, English teaches us how to properly speak and how to properly write. Math teaches us how to do our taxes and how to finance. And science helps us to be able to understand the entire physical world around us, which is awesome. And social studies? Well, social studies teaches us what dead people, or old people I guess, did or didn't do, and what impact that did or didn't have on a specific date and time. You know, information that's really relevant when working a 9-to-5 job in a cubicle for data management, or for us still in school who have to essentially just regurgitate all the dates, facts, and just information for a test, a midterm, and potentially a final exam. I want all of you to quickly think of maybe a mistake that you've made within the past couple of days. For me, it's that I procrastinated. I waited to do science notes for a science quiz I had last Wednesday until the night before. It was like 10 pages of notes, so it took me roughly an hour to do. I'm sure I'm not the only one here who's procrastinated within the past couple of days. And I know with near certainty that all of you have procrastinated not just once or twice before, but multiple times over and over, enough to know that it tends to be a pretty bad idea to procrastinate. So why do we keep making this mistake over and over again? Maybe it's because we're ignoring our personal pasts, our own histories. According to dictionary.com, history has 8 separate definitions. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go over all 8, otherwise this presentation will take literally over 30 minutes. Instead, I'm just going to go over definition number 4 and definition number 6. Definition number 4 is the record of past events and time, especially in connection with the human race. This definition helps us to realize that our memories are what make us who we are. Without our memories, we wouldn't be able to understand why we like or dislike someone or something. It's those interactions that we make with other people that give us a reason for our feelings. And without them, we wouldn't be completely different people because we don't have that insight. Definition number 4 also helps us realize that our memories are not just connected to 1 or 2 people, but a whole variety of people, a significant portion of the human race. It's our everyday interactions with one another that tell us who we were and who we are. It tells us who we were around our peers, friends, strangers, adults, authority figures, and teachers. And definition number 6 is acts, ideas, or events that will or can shape the course of the future. Immediate but significant happenings. This definition seemingly doesn't deal with the past at all. But in reality, it talks about how the present is impacting the future, which will be remembered as history. Let's put some context into this. In the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution was in full force in Europe. The amount of people working in terrible working conditions, even deadly, led to the rise of some more socialist and liberal policies advocating for better workers' rights. A more extreme version of these thought processes came from Karl Marx in his pamphlet, The Communist Manifesto. 100 years later, this would be the political philosophy for 2 massive world powers, the Soviet Union and Communist China. But in order to understand why number 6 is important for us, we have to look at a quote. Most of you have probably heard some variation of it before, and it is by George Santayana, presumably, we don't know for sure, a Spanish professor and poet who lived in the 1800s. The quote is, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." This quote helps us to realize that the human race, we tend to make mistakes over and over again if we don't actually remember the mistakes themselves or the consequences that come from them. It's almost human nature for us humans to just keep making mistakes over and over. But it's important by just acknowledging that fact that we can end up remembering, we can grow as people by simply looking at the past in context and understanding what our current actions are doing. So that answers why our personal histories are important. But there's still the history we learned in school. So, why does history class matter? History class matters because it helps to root us in time and helps us to understand the larger world around us. I'm sure many of us have watched the YouTube videos that deal with an interviewer going around to like a mall or just talking to people on the street every day, asking them a simple question like, where's Saudi Arabia? And you'll have the people who just give the most terrible answers, such as, oh, isn't it a place in like the United States, or isn't it somewhere in like Mexico? And you just want to slam your head face first into a corner of a table because of the ignorance. But the fact of the matter is, some of those are staged, but there are people out there in the world who just don't understand the larger world around them and the larger entities that can exist in it. But schools, that is the grand vision of history, but schools don't necessarily always achieve that. Schools sometimes focus a bit too much on the small details. Schools, and really those who make core curriculums, I'm not blaming the teachers here, I'm not here to diss them. Those who make core curriculums need to focus on less on the small, minute details and giving letter grades based off of that, but making sure that everybody understands how the interwoven events throughout history actually connect and tie in with one another. Schools need to focus less on the small aspects of history, which are important, but rather on the whole vision. I personally believe that one of the ways schools can achieve this is by focusing on the importance of individuality. Not only do the schools need to focus on great conquerors like Caesar or great speakers like Cicero, but also how individuals, let's say, a Roman merchant could help sustain the overall Roman economy and could help sustain the giant empire, Mediterranean empire that was Rome. Schools need to focus on the individual because there are 7.5 billion individuals in the world that actively impact the course of human history each day throughout their everyday actions. But like I said, schools don't necessarily always do this. So we ourselves need to find resources. There are resources such as primary sources from Catherine the Great. She wrote some memoirs, Catherine the Great being one of the rulers of Russia. And there are general stories of time periods such as War and Peace by Tolstoy. There are also YouTube videos out there from Crash Course and Extra History that help to describe certain people at times, but they also help us understand how those events and people relate in the overall course of history. But the important takeaway is this: our personal histories are important because they help us to understand who we were, who we are, and who we will be. And the history we learn in history class is important because it helps us understand the larger world around us and understand our place in time. Thank you.